sailor nib is right for you? Hi everyone, I'm Daisy and welcome to today's video. In today's video, we are going to be looking at all of the 5 different types of sailor nibs that are now available ever since December 2025. And we're going to be doing a quick writing sample of all of the different nib sizes across these 5 different nibs. So that is going to be 35 different nibs that we're going to be writing with in today's video. And then we'll go into greater detail for discussions of qualities like feedback, smoothness, consistency, softness, and overall value of the pen. And at the end of the video, I'm going to be giving recommendations for which sailor pen and which sailor nib is going to be right for you based on things that you are looking for in your sailor pen. So whether or not you're new to the fountain pen hobby or not, you've probably heard of Sailor. Sailor is one of Japan's big 3 manufacturers of fountain pens, along with Platinum and Pilot, and they are known really well because they make beautiful fountain pens in all sorts of finishes, whether it's transparent or opaque, glittery bodies, pearlescent bodies, iridescent, you name it, they've probably done it. But aside from having made beautiful fountain pens that everybody can appreciate, Sailor pens are also known because they do have a quality in their nibs when you're writing with them called feedback. And this quality is something that really differentiates Sailor pens from lots of other pen makers. And what feedback means is basically what you're feeling when you are writing with a nib on paper. So some fountain pens are very, very, very smooth and they sort of glide across the paper. And other pens on the other end of very smooth is scratchy. And that's kind of something that you don't want in a fountain pen. It's when you feel the drag of a nib on paper and you can hear kind of audible sounds of scratchiness. That's kind of a sign that you have something wrong with your pen. But what Sailor pens are known for are having a quality called feedback, which is comparable to the feeling of when you're writing with a pencil, a wooden pencil on paper, and how you can really feel the writing, the actual tactile feeling of writing, and hear the sounds of the graphite as you are making strokes on paper. So people really come to Sailor because of their beautiful pens, but also on top of their beautiful pens because they have this quality of feedback, which is rather hard to obtain. Specifically with when it comes to finishing a nib, they grind it in a certain way that does produce this little quality of feedback, which is not exactly scratchiness. A Sailor pen is both smooth and provides a little bit of sort of like a very satisfying quality of feedback, which you can kind of really feel when you're writing with it. So that's some of the reasons why people have come to really seek out Sailor pens over the years. Now, for the longest time, Sailor nibs have primarily been made available in 2 different nib types. They have had a 14 karat nib and a 21 karat nib. And recently, in December of 2025, they announced that they would sort of be scrapping that whole system and introducing a bunch more new nibs. So as of December 2025 to earlier this year in 2026, these new nibs have begun to be rolled out by Sailor so that we now have 5 different nib types and 5 different price ranges for these Sailor nibs. This is kind of a huge change, and if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed about which nib to pick from all of these new nibs that Sailor is introducing, I hope that by the end of watching this video, you'll have a good sense of which Sailor nib is going to be right for you based on what factors are important for you. So first, I'm going to give an overview of each of the 5 different types of nibs that Sailor introduced into their lineup as of December 2025. Okay, so here on this pen tray, I have 5 different pens with 5 different nibs that represent the 5 different nibs that you'll be able to choose from now when you are considering a Sailor fountain pen. This, of course, does not include their super high-end and luxury models, such as their King of Pen models or their Naginata grinds, or any of their sort of really, really high-end premium fountain pens. This doesn't really extend to, but this is going to be for most of their pens that the wide majority of people are looking at when they first think about getting a sailor pen. So the first nib is going to represent the steel nib, which is found on the Casual L line. This particular pen that I have here is the Casual L Stable. And there is also a regular edition of the Casual L, and this is the steel nib sailor that is going to be available in extra fine all the way to broad nib sizes. And the price point of these models are going to be around $200 to $230. The next nib that we're going to talk about is the small 14 karat nib. This nib is going to be found on 1911S models like the one I have here in nib sizes extra fine all the way to zoom. So that's 7 available nib sizes. And the price point for pens with this model is going to be about $390. The next nib is going to be the large 14 karat nib that is available on 1911L models like this one here. And this one is going to be available in nib sizes extra fine all the way to zoom at the price point of around $440 to $450. And the next one here, nib number 4, is going to be the large 18 karat nib that's also found on 1911L models in EF nib sizes all the way to zoom nib sizes at about $550. And lastly, we have the large 21 karat nib, which is going to be found on Pro Gear standard models like this one here, as well as older 1911L models that are now going to be discontinued, and you'll see these beginning to phase out starting pretty much right now. These nibs come in extra fine to zoom, and these are going to be quite expensive now at about $600 to $650. So those are the 5 different nibs that we're going to be talking about in this video, and the prices that I just went over are as of right now. It's April 2026 that we're filming this, and the prices of gold have gone up steadily over the last 5 years. And we've seen from lots of fountain pen manufacturers that they've had to increase the prices on their pens because of that price going up. So the prices that I just mentioned are as of right now at this moment. Let's go ahead and write with these nibs. Instead of using our typical Yoseka nib log, which we try to do for most other nib and line comparison videos, since we are comparing 33 different nibs across all of these pen models and all of these different nibs, we are doing an abbreviated version of a writing sample for today's purposes. So let's get started. Okay, so now that you've seen what it's like to write with all 33 of these nibs, let's get into it with a little bit of a discussion of some of the most important deciding factors that you'll want to think about when deciding on a fountain pen. So today we'll be discussing softness, feedback versus smoothness, line width, consistency, and of course, prices are an important considering factor. So that is something that we already went through in the previous part of the video when we went through all the nib sizes, and prices will obviously go into everything that you are deciding. So first up, softness. Let's take a look on our writing sample here. As you can see from our writing sample, the biggest differentiating factor going from a steel nib to a 14 karat small nib to a 14 karat large, 18 karat large, and then the 21 karat large, the biggest change that you'll notice right away is the softness, and that's the main thing that's changing. Whether or not you really perceive this in regular writing, that depends on how much pressure you're applying when you're writing. For me, I have a pretty light touch when I'm writing, and the main part where I'm really feeling the softness is when I'm purposely applying pressure just to test the softness of the tines. So you can see in my writing sample here, in the first set of lines that I'm making across all of these different writing samples, I am not applying any pressure at all. And in the second set of lines across all of these writing samples, that's when I apply a little bit of pressure to see if there is some softness that can be felt in the nibs. And for the steel nib, across all of the steel nib writing samples, the steel nib only goes from extra fine to broad. You can really see that even though I was pressing down a little bit on that nib, the line does not really widen that much. So the steel nib is quite stiff. And you can see that for the 14 karat small, there is going to be a little bit more softness in the second set of lines compared to the first set of lines. And that is going to be seen as you go from nib to nib. So from 14 karat small to 14 karat large, and then from 18 karat large to 21 karat large, with the softest nib being the 21 karat large, where you can really see, for instance here on the medium, how much thicker these lines are versus these lines, and how much thicker these lines are on the broad 21 karat large than these lines. The 18 karat is also quite soft, and you can see it here as well in the broad, where you have much thicker lines when you apply a little bit of pressure to thinner lines when you are not applying any pressure at all. So the 18 karat and the 21 karat are definitely the softest nibs, with the steel nib being a very stiff nib that hardly gives to any pressure at all when you're applying it when you're writing. Okay, moving on to our second factor that we're going to be talking today, feedback versus smoothness. So this is a really important one considering what we talked about earlier with the very quintessential defining factor of Sailor nibs being feedback. People in the fountain pen community have come to know, love, appreciate Sailor nibs because they are smooth, yet they write with a little bit of feedback, meaning that when you're writing along paper, you can really feel the paper in a way that a super smooth nib wouldn't allow you to do. So here's what I thought about feedback versus smoothness. For the steel nibs, you can really feel actually how smooth they are when you're writing with them. And I was very pleasantly surprised by that. I think this is because Sailor has stated about these nibs that they are individually hand finished. So each one, after they're manufactured, they are being hand finished, hand ground. And I can kind of really see that because they are very consistent and they are all really smooth, even though they are stiff and they are, at the end of the day, still a steel nib. They are really smooth. They write well. What they don't offer at all is that kind of sailor feedback that you might expect, which I think to some people they might miss that, but if you're new to sailor, you might not miss that at all. And if you really prefer a very, very smooth nib, you'll be able to find that in these new Sailor Premium steel nibs. However, if you are looking for that signature sailor feedback in a nib that a lot of people have come to know and love from Sailor, I have to say that the 14 karat small nib and the 18 karat large and the 21 karat large nib are probably the best options for you if you're looking for a really good balance of feedback and smoothness. To demonstrate that feedback versus smoothness quality that we observed with the steel nibs compared to the gold nibs, here I am writing with a broad nib across the Sailor steel nib and the Sailor 18 karat nib and the 21 karat nib to show you guys that the Sailor steel nib was really, really, really smooth to the point that there was no sound at all writing across the paper. Versus the 18 karat and the 21 karat nib were also really, really smooth, but you can hear that audible feedback from the paper as you're writing with the nib to the paper. And to some people, that feedback is a really, really important part of why they're seeking out Sailor pens, as I was saying before, and a really important quality of writing. I think a lot of people look for that when they're writing. They look for the tactile feedback from the paper so that it's not like you're writing on air, you can really feel the paper that you're writing on, and that's what people are looking for. Moving into our number 3 factor, this is line width. Let's take a look at a writing sample. I have to say that across all the 5 nibs, for practically all the nib sizes, extra fine, fine, medium, and broad, and for these 2 nibs, the music and the zoom, the line widths are very, very consistent across all of the 5 different nibs. So you can see here, these are all the extra fines with a very similar line width and line weight. And these are all the fines looking very, very similar, even though they are different nibs that are producing those lines. And same for medium fine. Where I see a little bit of a difference is the medium. The medium in the 18 karat large and the medium in the 21 karat large are a little bit wider in line width than the medium for the steel and the 14 karat small. Same goes for the broad. But for the most part, if you're very concerned about line width, or if you know Sailor line width and you're kind of using your knowledge of Sailor line width to consider purchasing your next Sailor pen with these new nibs, you don't really have to think too much. So if you like medium fine, go with medium fine. If you like medium, go with medium. It'll pretty much be the same and you won't be too surprised. Next up was consistency. I have to say that consistency to me means each nib feels relatively the same and it goes up predictably in line width, and they are the same in smoothness and they are the same in feedback quality, going up in nib size across the same nib. So for me, the steel nib was super, super consistent. And this, again, I guess wasn't super surprising, knowing that there is somebody at Sailor like giving it like the human finishing touch before they get shipped out. They are all really smooth, consistently smooth across all the nibs that I tried, with very predictable increases in line width going up in nib size. So this was a very, very consistent model. And there was some consistency between the 14 karat small, the 14 karat large. And once again, the consistency came back in the 18 karat large and the 21 karat large, where they were each just very, very consistently soft and had very good smoothness and feedback balance. So now I'm gonna make some recommendations for you based on what is important to you when you're thinking about buying a new fountain pen. If you're looking for a really good overall value when you're buying your Sailor pen, I have to say that you might want to consider the steel nib, and you can't really go wrong with the steel nib. I think that Sailor is going to be releasing a lot of different colors of their steel nib Casual L models, and they are, from what I've tried, very, very consistently smooth, and they are kind of like what you see is what you get. So for the best overall value, knowing that Sailor has had to significantly increase prices due to the price of increasing gold, I have to say that the steel nibs are actually very, very good. Next, if you are drawn to Sailor pens because they are really, really pretty, so you just want a really pretty pen that writes well, I have to recommend the steel nib again, because I believe that Sailor will be releasing these pens in many different colors, and some of their signature shimmer finishes, translucent, transparent, like all of what Sailor is known to do for all of their pens. I predict that we'll be seeing a lot of these coming out in the Casual L models with steel nibs, and they write well. So if that's what you're drawn to for Sailor, I think you kind of can't go wrong with the steel nib. Now, if you are looking for like the GOAT experience with Sailor, the greatest of all time writing experience with Sailor, I have to say that then you have to get the 21 karat nib. I really found that nothing quite beats the full experience of the 21 karat nib, which gives you a lot of softness, a lot of wetness, and just really, really good balance of feedback, but super, super smooth, satisfying nib to write. And that's if you're willing to obviously pay the increased price of these pens. We'll be looking at like $600 or so, and some of the special editions will probably be even more than that. But if you're looking for the GOAT Sailor experience, that's the one to get. That's the best. Now I'm going to give some recommendations based on nib size. So if you are an extra fine and fine person and you really like your nib sizes to be on the finer side, I would recommend going with the steel nib or going with the 18 karat or 21 karat nib. The reason being, these nibs are going to be the smoothest. The stainless steel nib, as you heard from my thoughts before, are super smooth across the board, and you'll be really satisfied. You'll be getting a really smooth nib that writes well. But if you want a soft nib as well, then I would look at the 18 karat and the 21 karat nibs. For me, the small 14 karat nib and the large 14 karat nib for the extra fines and fines were just a little bit more feedbacky than I would want a nib to have. If you are looking at a medium fine to a broad nib size, you are more than okay going with the steel nib, which is very, very smooth overall, and you're also fine going with the small 14 karat nib or the large 14 karat nib. And lastly, if you are looking at a Sailor pen because they have it available in a music nib or a zoom nib, well, those nibs are not available at all in the steel nib so far at this day. So you're going to be having to look at a gold nib, and for those, I would really recommend the large 18 karat nib or the large 21 karat nib, because those nibs just perform much better for the special grinds that a music nib and a zoom nib are. Okay, so there you have it. That was today's video, writing with all 33 new Sailor nibs and comparing them and giving recommendations based on what you're looking for. I know that Sailor has been making lots of changes for a company that we all love their pens. And for me, I think that those changes were a little bit scary because I spent a long time personally getting to know their 14 karat nib and their 21 karat nib really well, explaining them to everybody. And I think all of us were kind of just surprised by that decision. So I do hope this video comparing all 33 nibs that Sailor now has available in their pens makes things a little bit more digestible for you, and maybe you have a starting point in terms of where to begin looking at if you are thinking about getting a Sailor pen today. So let us know in the comments what you think of all these changes that Sailor is making. Let me know if this video helped you, or if you have more questions about the Sailor lineup that I didn't answer, feel free to let me know, and thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up on the video, subscribe to our channel. We post videos on stationery all the time, and thank you for watching. Bye.